Hello everyone, this episode will be about Microsoft Patch Tuesday for February 2022. I released it pretty late because of my previous big episode about the blind spots in the knowledge bases of vulnerability scanners. Please take a look if you haven't seen it. Well, if you are even slightly interested in the world news, you can imagine that the end of February 2022 in Eastern Europe is not the best time to create new content on vulnerability management. Let's hope that peace and tranquility will be restored soon, and also the geopolitical confrontation between the largest nuclear powers will be de-escalated somehow. But let's get back to information security. While working on Microsoft Patch Tuesday report for February 2022, I made a lot of improvements to my open source project for vulnerability prioritization, Vulristics. I want to start with them. One of the old problems is the number of CVEs. You can see in the Patch Tuesday reviews made by the VM vendors that they always mention a different number of CVEs. For example, for February Patch Tuesday, Tenable stated that 48 CVEs were patched, while other VM vendors reported up to 70 CVEs. Zero Day Initiative, Qualys, Rapid7. I understand where Tenable got the number 48. That's what the Microsoft API returns. As for other numbers, this is because they count not only vulnerabilities that were released on a specific date, but also the vulnerabilities released between Patch Tuesdays. And that makes sense, since most of security professionals and IT administrators review Microsoft issues once in a month. Therefore, if we will ignore the vulnerabilities that were published between them, there is a chance that something critical can go under the radar. But starting from what date do VM vendors count CVEs? I took the beginning of the month and got 70 CVEs. But it seems to me that it is more correct to take the next day after the previous Patch Tuesday as XMSPT date from. I decided to make a new profile in Vulristics, MS Patch Tuesday Extended. It will include all vulnerabilities that have been published since the previous Patch Tuesday, including the current Patch Tuesday date. There will also be a comment that the vulnerability was released before Patch Tuesday. There also was an issue with a search on the Tenable blog. It didn't work even in GUI. After trying to search for Patch Tuesday, I keep getting the error, "This page isn't working. www.tenable.com redirected you too many times." I hope Tenable will fix this, but bugs like this can happen regularly. So I decided to add the ability to define comments links directly in the file. Flag MSPT comments links path. When I generated the report, I found many vulnerabilities there, for which there was a strange log4shell exploit. It was a fake project on GitHub that mentioned thousands of CVEs. What to do with it? Of course, you can simply exclude all GitHub objects in vulners.com API output and ignore such exploits. On the other hand, this is bad because there may indeed be real exploits on GitHub that other exploit packs don't have. So instead, I decided to add the ability to exclude vulners.com exploits in dataexclusions.py. But let's now take a look at the Patch Tuesday for February 2022. There were 94 vulnerabilities, 3 critical, 20 high, 65 medium, and 6 low. The full report is available, you can see the link in the blog post. Let's look at 3 critical vulnerabilities. Remote code execution in Windows kernel Windows runtime CVE 2022 21971 and remote code execution in roaming security rights management service CVE 2022 21974. Both of these vulnerabilities were not mentioned in the Patch Tuesday reports released by vulnerability management vendors. However, their criticality has increased due to the publication of exploits on GitHub. These exploits were published by the same researcher. In both cases, exploitation requires opening a malicious RTF file in Microsoft Word. Despite the fact that these are remote code execution vulnerabilities, they have access vector local and user interaction required. Therefore, they are probably the most dangerous for desktops and will be exploited in phishing attacks. Remote code execution in Windows Authentic Code CVE 2013-3900. A remote code execution vulnerability exists in the way that the WinVerify trust function handles Windows Authentic Code signature verification for portable executable PE files. An anonymous attacker could exploit the vulnerability by modifying an existing signed executable file to leverage unverified portions of the file in such a way as to add malicious code to the file without invalidating the signature. An attacker who successfully exploited this vulnerability could take complete control on an affected system. Microsoft republishing a CVE from 2013 to inform customers that the Enable Cert Padding check is available in all currently supported versions of Windows 10 and Windows 11. Microsoft does not plan to enforce the stricter verification behavior as a default functionality on supported releases of Microsoft Windows. This behavior remains available as an opt-in feature via reg-k setting and is available on supported editions of Windows released since December 10, 2013. The reg-k already exists in Windows 10 and Windows 11, so no security update is required, but the reg-key must be set. The vulnerability is exploited in the wild and is mentioned in CISA Non-Exploited Vulnerabilities Catalog. Now let's highlight some of the 20 high-level vulnerabilities. Elevation of privilege in Windows Print Spooler CVE 2022-21999, CVE 2022-22718. Two vulnerabilities with one exploit. Quote, as researchers continue to focus their time on discovering flaws in Print Spooler, it is likely that attackers are as well. Therefore, organizations should apply these updates urgently. End of quote. These were all vulnerabilities for which there is an exploit or a sign of exploitation in the wild. What other vulnerabilities are worth paying attention to? Remote code execution in Windows DNS Server CVE 2022-21984. Quote, the server is only affected if dynamic updates are enabled, but this is a relatively common configuration. If you have this setup in your environment, an attacker could completely take over your DNS and execute code with elevated privileges. Since dynamic updates aren't enabled by default, this doesn't get a critical rating. However, if your DNS server do use dynamic updates, you should treat this bug as critical. End of quote. Remote code execution in Microsoft SharePoint CVE 2022-22005. Quote, this patch fixes a bug in SharePoint server that could allow an authenticated user to execute any arbitrary .NET code on the server side under the context and permissions of the server's account of SharePoint web application. An attacker would need manage lists permission to exploit this. By default, authenticated users are able to create their own sites, and in this case, the user will be the owner of this site and will have all necessary permissions. End of quote. Remote code execution in Microsoft Office Click to Run CVE 2022-22004 and remote code execution in Microsoft Office Graphics CVE 2022-003. Quote, remote code executions affecting Microsoft Office. Although this requires a local user to open a malicious file, these sorts of social engineering attacks are common and can be very effective. Updates should be rolled out to end users as soon as reasonably practicable. End of quote. Among the other vulnerabilities of the medium level, the following vulnerabilities are quite interesting. Elevation of privilege in Windows kernel CVE 2022-21989 and Windows Win32k CVE 2022-21996. Not much is known about these vulnerabilities, but if exploits come out, these vulnerabilities can cause a lot of trouble. Security feature bypass in Microsoft Outlook CVE 2022-23-280. Quote, Microsoft Outlook for Mac security feature bypass vulnerability. This Outlook bug could allow images to appear in the preview pane automatically, even if this option is disabled. On its own, exploiting this will only expose the target's IP information. However, it is possible a second bug affecting image rendering could be paired with this bug to allow remote code execution. If you are using Outlook for Mac, you should double-check to ensure your version has been updated to an unaffected version. There were also a lot of vulnerabilities in Microsoft Edge. Most of them were published before February 2022 Patch Tuesday. Some of them have the memory corruption type. For 6, the type could not be detected from the description. And that's it for today. Please subscribe and leave your comments. Bye.